Welcome to the Kensuke Heroes podcast special Alpine Bushfires series, where we share inspirational stories of everyday people from the Victorian Alpine region who went through the bushfires which occurred from late 2019 through to early 2020. These stories highlight the different challenges and events people went through and how they overcame them. Please be aware that the story you're about to hear may have moments of deeply felt emotions and personal experiences. If anything you hear has a triggering effect, please reach out to someone who can help you. If you love this conversation, please like and share it with your friends so we can continue to share more inspiration and hope to as many people as possible. Now, listen up for our next hero's story. This week on Kensuke Heroes Alpine Edition, we are featuring 3 stories of club members that were active in supporting the community during the Black Summer bushfires. Geoff Dinning, Les Harrison and Lance Symons are pillars of their respective clubs and have shared with us how they helped the Alpine region begin to repair after the tragic period of 2019-2020. First, we'll hear from Geoff about ongoing projects with the Rotary Club and how they brought back their community after the height of COVID. Hello and thank you. It's so good to be here. It's another one of our special series episodes for the Alpine bushfires, and my guest today is Geoff Dinning. Geoff, welcome.
Thanks very much, Aveline. I go back to when the bushfires were on the eve of the 2020. And I can remember being in Wangaratta, we could see the fires back up into the Upper Murray, absolutely devastating. And it made us realise as Rotarians that we needed to do something about that. And what we did is we formed a District 9790 District Bushfire Committee was formed early in January in 2020. And what we saw was the first project that needed to get underway was to help the children in schools in primary and also in the other schools, which are private schools, to get them books and stuff because the farmers didn't have much up in that area. So that was a big achievement, and that was put up through the Corryong news agent, so that gave the local businesses an opportunity to get a little bit of an income. From there, we decided that we needed to support the dairy farmers in the area, and with that project, we purchased dairy pellets for the cows, and that was a huge project to get underway, and we found that gave the farmers a little bit of support to see that there are people doing the work to support them. And once that was underway, we worked with Victorian Farmers Federation to get some hay into the area. And that was a huge, probably 200 or 300 semi-trailers into that area to support the farmers. And that sort of project continued throughout, and what we found though, and what we learned as a project, some of the big square bales we carted up there and delivered to the farmers, and overnight some of the farmers had 2 or 3 inches of rain, and that meant that the hay was no good. So we learnt that we needed to put tarpaulins over the top of the hay. So that was something that we learnt from that. We also supported the farmers with shipping containers to put their small items of machinery in there to keep them out of the weather. Another project was in Beechworth, Myrtleford and Mount Beauty area was air purifiers to lessen the smoke in the hospitals up in that area. And this was a joint project with a lot of Rotary clubs in the area, and not so much in the area as well, but we had support from Rotary clubs in the likes of Fremantle, and even the hay that came from a long way away. Ballarat supported us very well in the hay. The other projects that we did, there were a lot of small towns up in the Corryong area, and we found that we needed to support them. And we have what we call compassionate grants, and these are $2,500, but they go to various farmers and also even business people that have been burnt out or had smoke inhalation to their and needed new curtains and that type of thing. So probably over a period of time, and we're still continuing with that, it was probably over 40 compassionate grants of $2,500, and we've worked very closely with Gateway Health in Albury, Wodonga and Wangaratta to assist, because they were the people on the ground that were able to go and visit the farmers. But some of the smaller townships like Cudgee-War was completely burnt out. Corryong had fires right around it. Walwa, Towong, and Nariel valleys, and one of the other projects that was ongoing was Rotary Club of Melbourne supplied caravans, and we were able to deliver them to people that didn't have a house. And to see the look on the people when you drove in with the caravans, you could see that it made a difference to them, and they knew that they had that caravan until they got the house built. So it was very, very rewarding and this sort of thing. And our committee of 6 people met on a regular every Wednesday night on Zoom. It was on the committee made up of 2 from Melbourne, one from Yea, 2 from Albury Wodonga, and myself from Wangaratta, and 1 from Yarrawonga. So it was a joint effort from District 9790. So we really did sort of assist. And on the other hand, there was Blaze Aid, which came into the area for at least 6 months and helped the farmers to build their fences. Also, Benalla Uniting Church had a fencing team which came into the area, so they were able to give the farmers a little bit of assistance, and made that it worked out very well for the farmers, and made them realise that it was people that were looking after them. The other projects that were happening was there was some mental health issues in the area, and a couple of the young ambulance drivers came up with the suggestion that we'd have a walk for to coordinate the suicide victims that were, and these hats were purchased with the assistance of the District 9790 committee, and this walk went from Cudgee-War to Corryong and into Towong, and that really supported the people, because it was the younger people that were affected as well as the older people. And what we didn't realise, that we were concentrating on the older generation. It was the younger ones that really needed support. Also, some of the other projects, we started off with assisting. It was children starting up their own toy library, and that brought the young families in together, which benefited not only the younger people but also the grandparents that do look after the kids. A lot of the people had to move out of Corryong and away, and a couple of the Rotary clubs, I think it was Albury West and Albury North, put on a project where they gave holidays to the farmers and business people in the area, where they could travel, might be into just Albury Wodonga for a weekend, but and the bigger issues was the holidays over into New Zealand, because when New Zealand had their earthquakes over there, our district assisted them there and had them over here. So that was a return bout, and that was very, very positive, and a lot of good things came out of that. Just closed probably the link between Kiwis and Australia again, which we see quite often. The other projects were sort of ongoing, and as we still meet on a regular basis, like now we're meeting every 2 weeks. We're getting to the end now. I know it's probably 3 years, but there's still a lot of needy people up in Corryong and all of the Upper Murray, and even up into the Alpine valleys in Mount Beauty and Beechworth and Bright. Yeah, so I think overall we're probably quite satisfied that we were able to assist the area in the support of what we've been able to do.
Wow. That's a lot, Geoff. That's huge. As you know, you explained the first one with the books, and then you went on to the next one and the next one. And I'm thinking, okay, that sounds like enough. And then you've kept going and going and going. And it sounds like the people on your committee have done an amazing job to connect with different communities or different resource organizations and people to help provide all of these things. I've got a few questions. First of all, how did you come up with, who needed the support first? So what was the first kind of need that you identified? Would it be after the fires or during the fires?
Definitely after the fires, because the fires didn't last very long. They went through in probably less than 24 hours. And what we realised that we really needed to work with the community, and because the community were devastated, it was a very hard thing to do. But we did have members of our club. Marg Crisp was one that used to live in Corryong and living in Wodonga, and she could go up there on a weekly basis and talk to the people. But probably the closest link we had was with Gateway Health, which were up there daily to source out the bushfire affected farmers. And even up until last week, there was 2 new compassionate grants that came out that were able to assist them. So that's 3 years down the track, and we're continuing to find because some of those people are fairly way back up and the phones don't work, so it makes it very difficult to be able to work with those people in that communities.
Absolutely. Where's the funding come from for a lot of these projects?
Most of the funding came from Rotary clubs that commit to it, and also through what they call the RABS account, which is a Rotary International account with the national body that assisted us with the compassionate grants. But most of those were sort of to coordinate the projects and link Rotary clubs together to be able to support each project. And one of the projects, as an example, was Walwa Bush Nursing Hospital. They were one of the centres that the firemen were able to get help, but they needed a bigger cool room. So that was a project that was put together, and even companies from Melbourne came up to put the cool room in and that sort of thing. It was just amazing to see how the community support comes from everyone, and very, very positive outcome.
Yeah, you just said it, and I was thinking, what an amazing opportunity to see, the community spirit and how people actually do care about each other and how they pull together. And you don't see that as much in big cities. And as I think you're in a country community, and having bushfires go through it really forces people to connect even more and help even more, doesn't it?
That's right, and when going gets tough, the tough get going, and really that's where you see the support, and it's just amazing to see what people will do, and it doesn't matter. Sometimes when you're playing football, you play against the opposition, but something like this, everybody comes together and buckles in and help. But it's amazing the support from the Rotary clubs in the area, and even the Corryong Rotary Club that put on functions for the firefighters and that type of thing. So it was a really joint effort, and we're just slowly seeing the people in Corryong and those local communities just starting to lift, and that's a long time. But some of them over winter wouldn't light their fire because um, they knew that they see the flames, and that just brought back memories. So people in outlying areas that it was cold, they put an extra rug on, but that didn't make any difference. They wouldn't light the fire. So it just shows you the effect.
Yeah, I never thought about that, and until you said that, and it makes sense if someone's still got that trauma, and they just don't want to relive it, so that they don't put the fire on. Wow. Yeah, as you said, it's been 3 years, right? We're at the 3-year anniversary, and yet the work, the initiatives that you're doing are still happening. Support and cleanup and rebuilding is an ongoing process, isn't it? It's not just a physical rebuild in the first sort of period after the fires. From what you've described, it's been a journey, and it goes beyond just the physical.
That's right, and it will still continue there. There's a lot of the houses haven't been built. There's a process that's got to go through to get the permits, and and then what happens then is that all builders are very busy, so it's a waiting game to be able to get the build. So, and you can imagine the frustration between husbands and wives, that little things that probably niggle each other, and it's just a matter of being able to continue to support these people in the future. Also, been support for the business community and getting guest speakers up to talk about things and getting them together just around a barbecue so that the business community can talk to each other, because they get back in their little hole and don't sort of get out of it. And even when we look back nowadays, even with COVID, was on the top of it as well. So that made it extra hard to be able to bring people out into the community. So what we're seeing now, just down the track 3 years, we're just starting to see that sort of open up a little bit more, and people coming out. So it is distressing for a lot of people to go through this, and you just can't imagine unless you've been through it. But it makes me proud to be a Rotarian when you can assist people in various ways. Not so much, not the monetary thing. It's also about being able to make them feel good about themselves as well.
How do you see the mental health of the community 3 years on? Like, what are you seeing?
Yes, well, there had to be something done because there was 3 youth suicides in the area, and that's where the girls from the ambulance came together and put that on. But we do see a positive outcome in relation to now. The programs for youth, we sent them away on a youth project. Also, boxing's been brought into the area to give them something to do, and also gymnasium and that type of thing. So I think it's a matter of keeping them positive and giving them something to do rather than just schoolwork. So yeah. So.
Is there much more to do? Like, is there more ongoing work for you to do to support the community?
I think there'll always be ongoing work. But I think a role of the Bushfire Recovery Committee from Rotary District 9790 is probably nearing the end, and it's up to some of the other areas. And I know Bushfire Recovery Victoria has had input, but I think ours has been targeted probably more so at the smaller community areas and also families that probably wouldn't see any of that money from the government, whereas ours is not tagged, and it hits the spot really. All Rotarians can be proud of what they've been able to achieve to assist this committee in helping the Alpine communities in their place of definite need.
Absolutely. Next, we'll hear from Les Harrison, child of a station master, former head teacher at Kotong, and an active member of the Lions Club in Tungama. He saw the impact that the bushfires had on the community firsthand and reflects on his experience returning to his home of Kudjua after the fires, expecting to find it in ruins.
Even though I wasn't directly there, it had a massive impact on me. I grew up in Kudjua, which was badly affected by the bushfires, and in fact, we lived there from 1958 until 1960, when my dad was station master at the railways there. And in those days, it wasn't a long time after the disastrous fires of 1952. And I can remember being at school and our head teacher, Jim Nance, discussing these fires with us and all the things that they had learned to make sure that such a disaster never occurred again. And most of the things that he talked about were common sense things. Unfortunately, over the years, things changed. The railway eventually closed down. There's certain other issues arose as far as cleaning up roadsides, collecting firewood, and just making sure the place was, well, left spick and span and little chance of fire starting. And that at the time was the thinking of a lot of the locals, that they would never let it happen again. But unfortunately, of course, it did. And I think that's the sad part about it. Those 3 years that we were at Kudjua led me to regard Kudjua as my hometown. I'm a Kudjua kid. And when news came through that the whole town was threatened in this terrible disaster, well, it was like you were losing your own home and your own property. It was a horrible time. I might just backtrack a little bit too, that in 1971, I returned to the Upper Murray and taught for 3 years at the Kuitog Primary School, which is not very far away from Kudjua. And I went back there and played football and cricket and still knew a lot of people. So friendships were rekindled, renewed, and it was just as if it was yesterday that you left. And my heart still belongs to the Upper Murray. I just think they're a wonderful lot of people who didn't deserve to go through what they went through. Now, on that particular horrible time, we were getting ready to do a big job over at Nathalia with their Lions Carnival on the New Year's Eve, and the news that the fires had devastated a large part of the area really upset me, and I rang people who were up there, and the first words were, well, Kudjua's gone. It's been totally destroyed. And you can imagine the reaction. It was just horrible to hear that. And the lass who told me that firmly believed that they had lost their home in it as well. As luck would have it, later on, when they went out to their place to view the ruins, the fire had burnt right up to the house, but left the house standing. So they were very, very lucky. They also saved all their cattle. It was just an amazing stroke of luck. But I was very anxious to find out more and more about the effects of the fires. Very little concrete evidence was coming through the media. It was very difficult to get hold of a border paper in Tungamah where I live. In fact, it was jolly well impossible. And it was only through the bits and pieces through social media such as Facebook that we started to get a bit of a picture. Now, there are a lot of things around that area that you would hate to see destroyed. Some of it, of course, was, and it could never be replaced. Some of it survived, and like, for example, the Cudgewar Hotel, the old Permuan Rights store. I really believe that our childhood home would have been burned to the ground, but the railway houses all survived. And I guess in a way, when I went back there, it was quite comforting to see that at least that part of my childhood was still there, even though across the road at the old Rabbit Works and those places, they were destroyed, and I can remember playing in them as a child. So, yeah, there was a fair bit lost. It was impossible to go up to find out for ourselves how widespread it was at that time. I think it was a long weekend in January before we finally got to drive up there. And the first impression was driving past the ruins of the old Wobber Hotel, which was just a landmark for years and years and years. And yeah, to see it gone was quite sad. And coming into Cudgewar, so many places destroyed. But it was a bit comforting, or very comforting, when we got in there to find that most of the town was still standing, and it must have taken a tremendous effort by the firefighters to save all those places. And I guess they had to let vacant houses go and sheds go, but places where people were living were largely left standing, although I do know that there were people who were totally burnt out, and that was very sad. It then became, well, or long before we got up there at the long weekend, it became, what can I do? And it was not so much what I could do, but we could do as our local Lions Club. I was very passionate about some fundraising, and we organised a huge raffle in Tungamah. We had stuff donated from all over Victoria. Our members sold an enormous amount of raffle tickets. We just, the efforts of the Lions in our club were just absolutely incredible in raising funds. They just had this focus that we were going to help these people out. And I must admit, I kept doing a bit of kicking and nudging and just making sure that people stayed on track as to what we were after. And I can remember the night at the Tungamah Hotel when we threw the raffle. We had 32 prizes, I think. We raised well over $8,000, which isn't bad for a little Lions Club in a tiny little town. And we had the whole town there for it. And it was just magnificent experience to be able to do that and to be able to make sure that the money was handed on. Now, on the face of it, $8,000 doesn't go a long way, but so many other Lions clubs made huge donations and ran things as well. After the fires, of course, there was the re-fencing and just getting people back on their feet, farms secure. Now, I do know a group called Blaze Aid went up there and repaired fences, repaired gates. The Sikh community I don't know where they came from, but on the long weekend when we went up there to visit and to talk to some of my friends, they were out fencing, and I just couldn't believe what they were doing. I did meet one of them in Melbourne last year, or one or two of them, and they really are incredible people, and they pass under the radar a bit as far as people who just do so much for other people. And yeah, and just then to catch up with the Lions from Wildwood Ginjallic, and gee, some of them were really they were hurt pretty bad, and some of them had very narrow escapes, I might add too. And when we drove up along the Murray Valley Highway along the river, you just thought it must have been horrific, and it's just it was an experience seeing all this stuff, the ruins of homes and substantial homes, historic homes, and you think, well, how much has just been lost, our history, our heritage, and like thankfully to the CFA, so much was left standing. That's the amazing part about it. Then, of course, we were hit by COVID. Then the floods, and look, how much can these small, tiny communities take? They're just incredible people. They're so tough. Up there in the Upper Murray, they are tough people, and they're wonderful people, but it makes you wonder just how much they can put up. Like environmentally, as a very, I fished that Murray River up there for years and caught some wonderful trout and cod and redfin, and to see the damage done to the environment from the fires and the resultant death of so many fish and birds and animals just from the putrid water that the Murray became, and you started to wonder, will it ever clean up?
When you were describing in your story how you drove up the Murray Valley Highway and you said it was just unbelievable what you saw, and now when you drive up the Murray Valley Highway, it looks totally different. There's this regeneration, and in some parts, like in Corryong, you said it's hard to believe there was even a fire that ripped through there. And yet under the surface, there's still so much devastation that has yet to be healed or cleaned or healed, fixed. And as you said at the start of your story, your sharing, it's still ongoing today. How long does it take, in your eyes and your experience, Les?
Oh, look, I've been around a while with schools. I was a school principal for, 37 years. To some people, it never heals the mental hurt. That never really goes away when you've been through something like that. And I still talk to people whose homes are burnt down years and years ago, and they'll always say, the thing I miss most is, and it's just to us, the most inconsequential thing, like a doll or something like that they've lost, and it must have been so precious. And photographs, I would hate to live without my photographs because they're just reminders of good times. I mean, yeah, okay, you can live with, if your car crashes or catches fire, you can live with that and get another one. But it's the memories that, you can never replace. And I'm just looking around the room that I'm in at the moment here at home, and it's just full of memorabilia and photographs of happy times in our lives. And I'd hate to see it go. The horror of it all, I don't think it ever really goes away.
Our last guest this week is Lance Symons. Becoming president of the Myrtleford Bowling Club in May 2019, he couldn't have known what the fires the following summer would bring. Gathering the community around him, his business acumen has extended the reach of the club to provide a vital service of social cohesion and interaction for the residents of the Alpine region.
I guess my story starts in as much as in May 2019, I became president of the Myrtleford Bowling Club. And we're a small town in northeast Victoria, of course, in the Alpine Shire. And little did I know at that point in time, the bushfires would break out towards the end of the year. And hot on its heels was COVID came along to compound all the issues associated with running a very small club, and also associated with the town and greater area of the Alpine Shire. Fortunately, my background was in the wine industry for over 40 years in a sales management role. So the corporate world had taught me well in as much as the disciplines about running a club and looking after people in that regard. So I was very cognizant from day one of the need to help with the resilience and of the township on a broader scale than just being selfishly looking after the bowls club. I surrounded myself with people with the appropriate skills, and the benefits of that to this day have been sensational. When I took over the bowls club, they'd run at a loss previously. All 4 years, financial years since that date, we've made a profit, and we've put over $170,000 back into the club, even though it's a not-for-profit community club, so that's the right thing to do. And all those benefits, therefore, can be shared by not only the club members, but the wider community at large. And it's certainly paid dividends. We're a very highly respected club, not only in the Myrtleford township, but the Alpine Shire these days. And we've flourished in the difficult 4 years that we've had to go through. We've increased membership. We've just partnered and raised a lot of money for the Royal Children's Hospital in the last few weeks even. But we've enhanced our Barefoot Bowls program. So we've really recognised the need for social interaction and supporting the people of the township through difficult times. And they've come back to us, obviously, and our profile in the town has been enhanced, and everybody knows the bowling club is a good place to be at these days.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, and well done for being able to turn it around since you joined in 2019. That's really great to hear. So tell me, what was going on for you? You'd obviously been at the club for 5 months or so before the bushfires broke out, and what was the impact on you and also, I guess, the club, the community, and take me through then sort of how things played out at that point.
When I was shoulder tapped to consider taking on the presidency because the previous president and his wife were moving to Queensland, having been a member of the club for 6 or 7 years before that, the club has been very harmonious, and we've been able to achieve a great deal of things in conjunction, not only with the members' total support, but on a broader scale. And it was only a few months later the fires broke out, so that wasn't in the frame when I took over the helm of the club. But my experience told me that you have to, even though it's a relatively small club, not-for-profit community club, you still run it as if it's your own business, and that meant changing a lot of things within the club. My position and my attitude about all that, the difficult times with the smoke and the fires and loss of tourism which flowed from the fires and things of that nature, is that this is an ongoing program now, that so we must continue to build our profile and build on our reputation in the town, and we'll get the benefits long term as a club. So much so, quite an interesting story which has grown into something bigger than Ben-Hur was that in October 2021, I presented to the board of directors my dream, and my dream was to put a roof over one of the greens and change the surface to synthetic. Well, the response around the table was, well, good luck with that, and lots of smiles. So I promised the board, well, look, I'm a bit of a dog with a bone when I have a project in mind, so I promise I won't spend any money until I get your approval. Well, we're now at the stage where the whole town knows about this project, and this project has grown into something very big. So in June, in 2 months' time, we're very hopeful that the Alpine Shire Council budget will be revealed for 23-24, and we will have some sensational news associated with that, in as much as it will lead to the northeast of Victoria's first absolute world-class sporting facility, and in a town of Myrtleford with a population only about 5,000 people. But the benefits will certainly be tourism, environmental benefits, health benefits, and economic benefits. So, and I'm saying once again, not just selfishly for the club, but for the broader area of the northeast and certainly Myrtleford. So it's a really exciting project, and I'll be hopefully staying in the chair unless they want to kick me out until such time as we see this project to fruition, Aveline. Yeah.
Tell me about, how did the fires affect the community?
My perspective is probably a little different to some of the people in the town, in as much as I actually live in Bright, which is 30 kilometres down the road. Even though I'm president of the Myrtleford Bowling Club, Bright has its own bowling club. However, I just noticed that there was a lot of businesses really wanted to cut back and run a very tight ship to try and survive, because tourism was blocked, and in some cases they sort of advised tourists to vacate the area in some of the critical periods of the fires. And so there were a lot of, shall I say, fragile people that had put their life savings and everything into their business, and were very fragile when it came to mentally how they were going to get through this, and hoping that it wasn't prolonged, and then to get slammed with the COVID thing on top of it, that sort of added another dimension. And to this day, it's been very much going to visit these people one-on-one, or inviting them to our club, and looking after. We don't do meals or have poker machines, but to look after them and make them feel very special. The word spread quickly that the environment at the bowling club was very welcoming, and it took a lot of pressure off a lot of people, enabled them to have that social interaction, where otherwise they would just stay home and were trying to save a dollar. So we feel really proud of the way that we have, on an ongoing basis, year on year, have done a little bit more and more and more, and realising that it's more about being very much part of a community rather than just a club in the town.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How did you do anything, I guess, in response to the fires and how that impacted the community in the club?
We had to sort of contact them to make sure they stayed in the club initially, or not so much, not that they didn't want to be part of the club, but they withdrew from society to some extent, very concerned about not only their own welfare, but perhaps what else was going on a larger scale. And we had to make it shared responsibility from the executive and the board of directors that to contact all players on a regular basis to make sure their mental health as well as their physical health was okay, and to get them to get out and to build on the fact that the social interaction could only be good for them. Gave them also the physical opportunity to have their game of bowls that they love, and that sort of spreading on to the wider community has meant that we've grown the numbers for barefoot bowlers. They don't have to become a member to be a barefoot bowler, but the numbers have grown greatly, and we've gathered quite a few new members through those programs, which has been great. And wherever you go now, I feel welcome everywhere in Myrtleford, throughout the whole township. Part of what we also tried to achieve was getting articles, publicity. So in the local paper, the Alpine Observer, we would try to have an article every week, or whether it be just about scores for pennant or about certain players or tournaments or things of that nature. And that, once again, with an invitation always, come and have a game of bowls, and just create that atmosphere.
I could only imagine that during those difficult months and then the ongoing COVID, but certainly when the fires started, having those programs open and growing those, and like you said, reaching out to people and making sure that they were invited and kept connecting with the others was just a lifesaver for them. I mean, this is what people need. They need the connections. They need to be part of the group and maybe made feel part of something.
Well, it's very hard to measure, Aveline, very hard to measure that. I also understood that to get the best out of the people that you're involved with, you have to work together as a team. If they're enjoying themselves, they'll want to spend more time at the club and become more involved. And so that's been very much my leadership, part of my leadership philosophy, to make sure everything is inclusive and make people feel really, really welcome. And it certainly paid dividends in our case at the bowling club.
How did you see the community get through the fire period, and then after that, once at the rebuild phase, should we call it?
Some didn't get through in terms of it probably to this day still affects their mental health, and they retracted perhaps socially as well. And the demographic in the town is probably a little older than that in Bright. Bright has, over recent years, has attracted more people looking that couldn't afford the sea change that have come to an area, the northeast and the greater Alpine region, where there are so many options and things to do that the 30 and 40-year-olds with two kids have moved here, and they can sit in the backyard in the sun and conduct their business on a laptop, things of that nature. But there's great opportunities as well, and the lifestyle is so diversified and so great. It's been good. Probably a more stable but older demographic in Myrtleford that was relying heavily prior to the last 6 or 7 years on tobacco, which they closed the industry down. So that really left the timber mill as the key employer as well. Since then, the town has searched for other industries to really build on, and it's been a very slow build, So I think one of the saving graces is that the people on the land have seen quite dynamic values in terms of beef and sheep and farming. So that has been a positive that has brought back people in a very positive frame of mind. But some are still, to this day, I'm sure, struggling. So, going forward, I guess we hope for some consecutive years of fire-free period, and people can really build their lives 100%. I guess is what I'm saying.
Has the community kind of put in place anything new after these fires on a physical level or a humanitarian kind of personal level to potentially cope if more fires come in the future?
Look, I spoke to the vice president of the footy club a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I think, and because I had this thing in mind that I wanted to see every single club in Myrtleford come together, and even if we only got stickers and a little stand with all the brochures in it regarding Beyond Blue and mental health and issues that might have made life difficult for a lot of people, irrespective of their age. I was a step behind because the football club had started a move for themselves, for their club. But I still want to see going forward that all clubs come together so that we can have at the front door or wherever it may be a welcome message for anybody that just wants to come in and talk if they've still got issues, whether mental health. Because I unfortunately see that as one of the a growing concern Australia-wide for various reasons, and it doesn't have to be catastrophic floods or fires, but so that when you have a position of responsibility like mine and the board of directors, we have an obligation to support programs of that nature as well.
Lance, thank you so much for sharing. I love what you're doing. I love your positivity, your connectedness, the way you're developing these programs and growing the spirit of the club and connecting with other clubs and making it so accessible to people and being a solid place in the community for people to go and enjoy. And it's so important. And I just want to thank you for sharing and everything that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate your time and having the opportunity to have a chat to you, Aveline. So, thanks to you and Ian for developing this program. And I hope down the track it provides some benefit for others to share in.
Absolutely. I know it will. Thank you, Lance. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Kintsugi Heroes with the Alpine Bushfires special series. Please like and share the show to your friends so we can get this out to even more people. If you have a story you'd like to share with us, please reach out using the contact details below. And join us for our next hero's story. Until then, keep being you and remember that we are all heroes in our own unique way.
Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. When it hits you in the middle of the night and the truth burns so bright. Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. Take pride in those cries. It's only for tonight, and then you rise. Only when you're broken. Only when you're broken.